Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
The unit of Alphabet Inc.'s Google, YouTube, is going to bar videos claiming that any group is superior to others to justify discrimination, segregation, or exclusion based on qualities like age, gender, race, caste, religion, sexual orientation, or veteran status, YouTube said in a blog post Wednesday. It further said this would include videos that promote or glorify Nazi ideology, for example, and could affect thousands of channels. Who cares? Or maybe you say, this is great, show's over. Not so fast. Not so fast. Hang in there. Because we can't begin this conversation without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Where do I start?
The company also said, Lance, that
when we let people in America have a job at a cash register who think 450s equals 150, my gosh, we can say whatever we want here now. Let's go. True event in my life.
The company also said it would remove content that falsely denied the existence of factual violent incidents, like the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut and Nazis' mass murder of Jews and other groups in World War II.
Okay. That, if you take it on the surface level, that part I'm okay with. Mm-hmm. Except who determines what really happened.
Right. Who decides what is false information.
Right.
So we'll break this.
On the surface, that's good. The first part of what you read, I don't agree with at all.
Yeah.
But that part I can agree with on the surface, except the problem is, but anyway, go ahead. I won't take over yet.
We'll break this down yet. I love that was added yet. We're going to break this down into two pieces because Lance right there identified the two. I think they put this all in one statement. That doesn't mean they're viewing it as the same thing though. Understanding why they're doing this, okay? This is all, by the way, from the Wall Street Journal, Thursday, June 6th edition. For years, YouTube, in addition to social media companies Facebook and Twitter, attempted to skirt the task of adjudicating content, justifying the hands-off approach with the view that their sites and apps are, quote, content-neutral technology platforms. A recent survey, though, from the Anti-Defamation League found that 37% of Americans experienced online hate and harassment in 2018. Some 17% of all users encountered hate and harassment on YouTube, specifically, according to the survey.
Welcome to life.
So this is, generally speaking, and the part of the problem here, when we say generally, right, is this is a survey, and then you have another group that does a different survey. In experiencing hate on a regular basis, this is definitely higher than in real life. But we've talked about that before, right? This is, there's a screen between you and the other person. It's less personal. So therefore it's easier to get more personal, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Cause that's what happens, right? I'm sitting here looking at this computer and I can get all mad at Slackbot because I don't know who Slackbot is and I can't talk to Slackbot and, all this, right? I hate Slackbot. And there it was, right? Real quick, I jumped to I hate something. So we're going to talk a little bit about.
My grandma told me you don't hate anything.
Yes.
I tend not to use that word very much. That was something that one of the many life lessons that she taught me when I was little that I've tried to live by. And occasionally I slip, but very, very rarely do I say I hate something.
The reason, and maybe I didn't nail this down initially as quickly as I usually do. The reason that you care about this, maybe you're somebody like Lance and you're not on YouTube, right? So who cares? I'm not online. Don't need this. Or maybe I am online and I don't use YouTube, Maybe you're like my dad. Watches Netflix, watches Hulu, right? But YouTube, nah. So who cares? YouTube has become so prevalent. You can fact check me here, producer, but I'm pretty sure it's the number 2 search engine in the world now behind Google, which by the way is the same company, owned by the same company, Alphabet, which owns Google and YouTube. Number 2 search engine.
Well, sure, because if you're Alphabet, you control everything.
Which means
because it's all the words are there.
Clever, huh?
If you have the alphabet. That's right.
We are the alphabet?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, true. Interesting name, isn't it, Lance? Do a little bit of everything.
I think somebody knew what they were doing when they called the company that.
They did some research, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So the reason that you care, even if you're not a user of YouTube, is because this goes to a larger issue of content in the modern age. It isn't the same as it was 30 years ago. It just isn't. And that doesn't make it bad. It just means that we have to have a conversation that we maybe wouldn't have had 30 years ago or had in the same way, right? 30 years ago, if you were going to get news, you turned on the TV or you read the newspaper. Yes?
I think the issue's bigger than that. Sorry. I mean, I'm not putting down what you just said. I think that's true, but I think the issue, why you should care, is much bigger than that. It's a First Amendment issue.
Mm-hmm.
The First Amendment doesn't say, I only get to listen to things that I like. It doesn't say that. So I think that to me, when I read this article, and I understand what you're saying and I agree with you, but to me, you should care because this is a First Amendment issue of that just because I don't like what somebody else says or what their opinion is, doesn't mean that it should be taken away. That's part of public discourse and educating ourselves and having common courtesy and reflecting on what somebody else believes.
But we have regulated, right? I mean, it's easy. And this isn't saying that because obviously, right, owning the company that I own and doing what I'm doing for a living means that most of you can probably take a guess on where I stand on the strength of the First Amendment. But we also have, the Supreme Court has upheld, right, that we have legal restrictions in place on to what extent your free speech is legal. In other words, yelling fire in a movie theater, right, or bomb on a plane, inciting violence or terror is not protected under the First Amendment. Typically. And again, this is where the water gets muddy because different cases have gone different ways. In other words, did you say something that wasn't true that negatively impacted a large group of people? So we hit a couple key clarifiers there, I think, right? Number one, wasn't true. Number two, impacted a large group of people. If I yell fire and there's no fire in a movie theater and I'm the only one in there, it doesn't really matter that it's false because that falsehood didn't impact any other people, right? Didn't cause anybody any terror. It didn't do anything, right? Other than just me being dumb and I guess having fun being weird and yelling fire. So I think to that point, what we're going to examine today is a couple different things. You have YouTube, okay, which again is privately owned, right? I mean, it's a public company in that it has shareholders and so forth who own Alphabet, which owns YouTube. But what I mean by that is it's not a government run entity. It is owned by shareholders. It's a private company. It's a private company. But we've talked before about with organizations like Facebook that now have such a mass user base. Now are they crossing into that realm of it doesn't matter that you're a public company because the public good outweighs your right as a private company to determine how your content is handled. Because originally, right, we go back to their roots and they maintained that their hands-off approach was because they were content neutral technology platforms. But they're a private company. And later they say, well, that's not really quite it anymore. We now say we have to take a role in this. Does the government really have a right, Lance, to say they don't? I mean, do we have a right to say they don't? We can say they shouldn't. We have that right. But do we have the right to stop them?
Well, you stop them by don't use their platform.
Easier said than done.
No, it's not. I don't use their platform and my life goes happily, merrily along.
Let's go back to AT&T though, right? When they were the phone provider in the United States. Mm-hmm. That wasn't fixed by people saying, we're not going to use AT&T because people looked at having a telephone as most people, not everybody, most people looked at that as non-negotiable.
So are you saying Facebook's a monopoly? Because AT&T was broken up because it was deemed a monopoly by the government.
Correct.
And the government has law, but Facebook's not a monopoly.
Why? We had that show, right? We talked about that a little bit.
Right.
I think that they are.
Okay.
in a different respect than AT&T, because I don't think that are they manipulating a physical good? No. Are they manipulating a commodity of information? Yes, they are. I think information's a commodity. Maybe, people could dispute that part of it. But I think if we accept that information
I
is a
still
commodity,
have the New York Times, I have the Wall Street Journal, I have the Urbana Daily Citizen, I have the National Geographic, I have an entire library of books. So how is Facebook monopolizing information?
Well, we have to be careful I don't necessarily want to go down that rabbit hole particularly.
Oh, okay.
But I think, we had that show and we didn't get into, Lance and I think, finishing, is it a monopoly? But we did both, I think, agree, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that the government should probably take steps to break away Instagram, WhatsApp, and some of the other subsidiaries that Facebook now controls, because it is monopolizing the information commodity in the digital world, put it that way.
Okay.
So sure, you can still get the newspaper. But if you're not somebody who's going to get the newspaper, then just like, right, with AT&T example, you could send a message via mail. So it's not that AT&T was preventing you from communicating, but they were controlling a way in which you might communicate. Anyway, so
go ahead.
So there's that part that I think our users have to consider. We don't want to spend too long on the private company point, but I guess all of this is to preface and say, don't forget they're a private company, right?
Right.
And they're not quite regulated the same way, and maybe they should be, that organizations like the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times are, as journalistic organizations, right? As news organizations. But maybe it should be, because aren't they at least distributing news? Absolutely. If you Google news on YouTube, you'll find the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal on those platforms distributing their content. So back to the point, Lance, then about their standards, right? The first set of standards, again, just so that everybody's on the same page, YouTube says that it will bar videos claiming that any group is superior to others to justify discrimination, segregation, or exclusion based on qualities like age, gender, race, caste, religion, sexual orientation, or veteran status. It said this would include videos that promote or glorify Nazi ideology, for example, and could affect thousands of channels. You don't like that? Why?
No.
Why?
Because it's like saying you have to listen to me or you're wrong. And that's not how this country was founded. We have a difference of opinion. What we have in this country is a problem of people dealing with different opinions. The problem is not having differing opinions. It's both sides are bad. If you're on the left and you say, well, only my opinions matter, that's just as bad as somebody on the right saying, well, my opinions are the only ones that matter. We should be having a public discourse over what these things, what we're talking about, and not be afraid to listen to the other side and have a conversation. And then but we don't, because I don't know whether it's the technology or the way we're bringing up people or rules like this that say, if you don't agree with me, then you're the enemy. And that's not the case. There are lots of things that you and I don't agree on over the years that we have totally different opinions about, but we're still friends. We can still sit in the same room together for hours and talk about things and not feel threatened by one another. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, young people today and maybe even older people, but particularly among the young, and anybody that I hear about with this online stuff is just, if you disagree with me, you're the evil one. And it's like, that's not what this country's all about. It hasn't been. Maybe that's where we're going, but that's a very scary thought when we can't have disagreements with people and then it affects our friendship and our relationship. So, and it's not just young people. It's everybody, not everybody, but it's across the age, but we're raising young people to feel like if somebody disagrees with you, then they're evil. And that shouldn't be the case. I don't want everybody to agree with me.
It'd be pretty boring.
I want somebody to challenge my thought process to see if what I'm saying makes sense. And most of the time I think it does. But if it doesn't, then I'm willing to change. And we've had this discussion. I don't think that's flip-flopping.
Right.
As you get new information, and that's another thing that I get when I talk to people is like, well, I didn't know that. Okay, then why are you so adamant? Right. Because I know I don't know that much. The more I read and the more I learn, the more I find out I don't know. So it just makes me want to read and learn even more.
To see how much you can accumulate, because I think that's part of, some people might, again, if you're listening and you're one of those people that kind of identifies Lance and I as maybe more bookworms. I was trying to think of a better word than nerd, because I think there's a lot that goes along with that today. But people who like to read, learn, that kind of thing, keep in mind that most people all have that disposition. It presents in different ways, right? So whether that's Lance and I with, for example, I spent time, I have all these random facts. And if you talk to people that know me, I share these things and they're like, okay, why do you know that? Because I enjoyed learning it. Mm-hmm. Not because necessarily it was useful to my life, but you turn to somebody like Caleb, right? And he's our producer, by the way. He's here with us.
Hi.
There he is. So you turn to somebody like Caleb, and he's got that same desire, that same passion that presents in sports, mm-hmm. right? That same craving to learn new information, right? How much can I know about this thing so that I can be better than others?
Or at least not sound like an idiot.
Right.
Right.
And it comes for different reasons, but I think that all goes back to this because, and it transcends sports and politics too. We're building this new building on the family's property, and I've met contractors in concrete and plumbing and electricity. They are passionate about those things. And I'm not saying all contractors, right, are. I'm saying some of the ones I've talked to are, and they love it, and they know, and they're eager to learn the new things that are there, the new ways to do it. They know the code well, because that's, for them, that's the thing, right? And those are just examples because it's different for everybody. But I think that goes back to part of why I want to try to empathize with the position that YouTube's in. I'm not saying that they're making the right choice, but I'm saying that, boy, it's a tough one to make, because this is where we'll bring in the TrueChat example, and it's at a perfect point too, timing wise. Mm-hmm. What's our mission?
Well, our mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations.
Okay, key here, because we're going to break down the mission a little bit in a moment. Because I think this is how we drive it home, right? We make it personal for the three people in the studio here, this mm-hmm. mission that we set out and say, this is what we're working on. We'll see if we can put ourselves in the conundrum that YouTube is in. But before we do that, debate of the day. We're going to see if Lance comes up with something. We'll give him a minute to think here. If not, I've got one picked out.
I was going to say, I have the one that
I
you
got nothing. That's not my part of the show. This is you.
That's me.
You two youngins trying to put this in the show. I can care less about this. I just answer the question.
Okay.
I don't come up with topics.
Okay. Topics? When we talk about topics. Okay. So anyway, we're going to continue and break down, making this personal, trying to empathize with the position YouTube's in. But before we do that, we're going to take a brief moment to hear from one of our sponsors. Welcome back. YouTube bans hateful videos from the site. We're going to look at hate, and we're going to try to empathize with YouTube, right? Try to put ourselves in their shoes for a moment here. But before we do that, the debate of the day. Mm-hmm. Lance.
Can't wait.
You excited?
It's hard to sit.
So this one you heard before. Cake or pie? We didn't talk about it on air.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
We didn't actually talk about it on air, but
this was the one I stole from you, right?
That's right.
It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. I mean, you know this. We've talked about this forever. It's pie. There's nothing better than pie.
Favorite?
Wrong.
If you could only keep one pie.
The Gen Zer who has experienced nothing in life thinks he knows it all, right? My favorite is cherry pie.
Cherry pie.
Mm-hmm. Followed closely by butterscotch, then pecan.
Okay. All right. Stop now. Please.
And I do like the meringue on top, even though I don't know anybody that can make it now.
Yeah. But make a proper meringue.
Mm-hmm. I mean, on a pudding pie.
Oh, yeah.
You don't put meringue on a fruit pie.
Right.
That's wrong.
That's wrong. That's wrong. Caleb?
Okay, so before I go into this, I need to explain myself to the pie lovers out there and to Lance.
Oh.
I have not had a lot of pie in my 17 years of existence on this planet.
He hasn't experienced something, but he knows what he likes and doesn't like.
But the experiences that I have had with pie have not been pleasant to my taste buds, we'll say. Or at least not as pleasant as they have been when I've had the triple-decker chocolate cake with buttercream icing in between the layers and Hershey Kisses all over it that Mother makes. Shout out to my mom because she's a beast when it comes to cake.
Okay,
So you're saying your mom can't make pies?
No, she can make pies. I don't eat them, but she can make pies.
Oh, no. I hope.
There it is, Mom.
Yeah.
There it is.
I hope
Josh eats them.
I
Well,
hope
Josh
Mom's
used
listening.
to.
Oh.
Before Josh became a health nut,
okay.
he used to eat the pies all the time.
Pie can be healthy.
Sugar cream
which does
especially.
Which does Dad prefer?
Phew.
You're putting him in a tough spot.
I
might not
no
want to
idea,
incriminate him on the
actually.
show.
I'm sure Dad would eat either if you put them in front of him.
I see.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Very diplomatic.
Good
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
Your dad's thanking you for this. if he listens. Thank you, Caleb. Thank you.
But Mom, you heard it. Caleb doesn't like your pie.
That's
so
right.
Quit spending time making
I don't
it.
eat the pie. Josh used to eat
Why
the
don't
pie.
you- why
Dad
don't-
eats the
Well,
pie.
why
She
don't
eats
you
the
eat the pie?
I don't eat the pie.
Why not?
I don't like the taste of it. I don't like
See,
the feel
Mom,
of it.
he doesn't like your pies.
No, that's not what it is. It's the recipe. The sugar cream pie
he doesn't-
does not
You gotta
float
quit.
my
You
boat.
gotta quit.
Okay,
You're
I'm
just-
sorry.
Just digging the hole deeper and deeper.
Lance-
First, it's I don't eat it. Then I don't eat it because I don't like how it tastes. And then it's I don't like how it tastes because of the recipe. It's like, man, we're just punch
Probably
after
a family
punch.
recipe back 7 generations.
Yeah, it's
something
probably-
terrible like that.
Lance, have you had a sugar cream pie?
A sugar cream.
What does
Yeah,
that
sugar
mean?
I
cream
don't
pie.
know what you.
I don't know.
never
That's
had-
just what they call it.
Okay. Well, if your mother will make one, I will gladly partake of it.
Absolutely.
I've never heard of a sugar cream pie.
Good, because I will not.
I even eat bad pie because I like pie.
I have moon pie. Does that work? Does that count?
No, that's a cake.
Those moon pies?
No, moon pies are a cake.
Ooh, we're going to have to get into a preview of one to come that we won't talk about right now. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Don't say anything.
Oh,
Don't say anything.
dude.
So
So I
this one gets people upset. I
so
know.
obviously, if you'll even eat bad pie, pie is your favorite.
Yes. If I had to keep one, because I shared this before. I really
What's
love
your favorite pie?
It's again, if I was going to keep just
you said
one,
apple crumb, right?
Yeah.
Apple crumb is your favorite.
Dutch.
Dutch apple.
Oh, we made
Yeah.
one of those. We
Right.
made
Which
one of
has
those for
which has a crumb. Yeah.
When we were in history in 8th grade, we had like a world fair kind of thing. Well,
Mhm.
actually a colonies fair. And Kerrigan Cushman and I had New York. And so we made a Dutch apple pie for our New York, because you had to have an edible
Yeah.
good from that time era. So we made a Dutch apple pie.
There you go. Lance, world culture, baby.
Well,
Here
technically,
we go. Dutch apple
she
pie.
made the Dutch apple pie with
Okay.
her mother. So I don't know if it was
Oh.
good, but yeah.
And to answer the order in which then I would proceed after that is the same order which Lance presented his pies. So Dutch apple, it leads it off, followed by cherry, followed by butterscotch. Pecan would be a little further down, probably. I like pecan, but I have to be in the right mood for that one. That's not like one that I'm like, ooh, but I like it. Just, again, haven't met many pies that I don't like. I'll eat key lime pie. Coconut cream pie is lower on the list.
That would probably be Dad's favorite. Now that I'm thinking about it, he loves his coconut.
Okay, coconut cream pie. Got
Loves
it.
his
We'll have to
coconut.
bring in more pies for Caleb. I'll just pick up some cheap ones at Kroger or something and say,
Oh,
there.
yuck. Yuck.
I said
He'll
cheap
never,
ones.
he'll never like them if that's what you're going to serve him.
Well, where should we get them from?
Der
Where-
Dutchman, right? If you want to pay an arm and a leg, Der Dutchman.
Well, if you want good pie, you can't spend too much money on pie.
You have to make it at home if you want to eat a good one.
Okay, you want to make some for us?
Or Berardi's up in.
I know you only do that a few times.
Berardi's
a year,
up in Huron, Ohio, makes a really good pie.
but- Ooh, road trip, a Waffle House, and
Another
the-
road trip, yes.
road for
They're
pies.
the company, if you've ever been to Cedar Point,
Uh-huh.
who had the original fried potatoes at Cedar Point.
Oh,
That's
look at
why
that.
he's the senior historian.
Right? Yeah, there's one of those quote unquote useless pieces of knowledge that people have to share. So cake versus pie, let us know at TrueChat.org. Back to the topic at hand, YouTube. And the way we're empathizing is I'm going to criticize TrueChat's mission. That comes from the guy who wrote it.
I was going to say.
Just to be clear.
They're your words.
I'm not going to put it this way. I'm not going to criticize it. I'm going to use it to show, hopefully, our listeners how we could be in a similar situation. Lance talked a lot about that. We've been doing this for a few years now, and we've done a few hundred episodes. And that naturally means that I think you put any two people, right? And at some point, they will disagree. And that's part of what makes humanity so interesting is that disagreement. The question becomes, and I think this is part of what YouTube is trying to address. Again, are they doing it well? That's different. But part of what I think they're trying to address, what I see here is, at what point does the conversation have to be stopped because one party is no longer participating they're no longer participating in a conversation, right? It has become, I'm not actually even hearing what you're saying. I'm only interested in what I'm saying. And Lance identified that as part of the problem. It's part of what our mission's about, right? Mm-hmm. Educating people by providing honest, open, respectful conversations. And there's a whole load of things that come along with that. To educate, right? I mean, we could get into that, but that's not really quite part of this program. Honest. So we would assume factual, yes. Or true to oneself. Maybe we could pull up, Mr. Producer, honest, open, respectful definitions. Because, in order to be honest, so you're going to be true to oneself or relay information accurately. I mean,
tell us what you wrote those words. What did you mean by it?
Right.
Don't give me the dictionary definition. I don't care what the dictionary says.
That is what I meant.
You tell me what let's tell the listeners what you meant when you wrote this. What did you mean by honest?
Honest to me meant sincere. Okay. So
what's open
and true. Honest is sincere and true. Okay. So
hence TrueChat.
Right. Hence, hence the name.
What's open mean?
Open being hopefully what you get in this context, which is there's not topics that are off limits. In other words, the door is open, the table is open to all opinions and all viewpoints.
So we can talk about Puerto Rico, education, medicine, Rwanda,
right?
Whatever,
sports,
right?
I mean, pie. And also a diversity of viewpoints in that open.
Okay, well, but what's respectful then?
And then this is...
I would have said respectful were different viewpoints. But so when you wrote this, what do you mean by respectful?
And then respectful is, it builds into the last point, having a conversation in a way that is open to listening to other people and remaining civil. Okay. So you can see these things were written because they're intertwined. They're all part of this idea, right? Of we want to educate people. And the way we're going to do it is with honest, open, and respectful conversations. So honest, open, and respectful are clarifying the conversations that we're using to educate people. In many ways, while YouTube doesn't have quite this rose-colored mission statement that Justin drafted, they do, I think, what they are looking to do was admirable from the get-go, right? I think that trying to provide a content-neutral platform is a lovely idea. Mm-hmm. But like at TrueChat, we invite somebody in, right? We have a guest on, and they become belligerent. Now they're no longer conforming with what we've laid out as our parameters. So we remove them from the conversation. Now we've censored their speech and potentially, right, violated their First Amendment. But was that justified? In other words, this is to me the crux of this conundrum that YouTube is in. At what point does a group being mean to others no longer merit their right to be mean, Well, see, and that's to me that's why this is difficult.
But who's in charge of perceiving that they're being mean and just being open and honest?
That's why it's tough. Because it is, very much in the eyes of the beholder, right? I might feel, for example, that I'm being attacked by a guest.
Right.
And they don't mean it that way at all.
Exactly.
So I perceived it that way and I removed them from the conversation and they say, well, I didn't mean, I wasn't trying to do that.
That's what I was getting at in the beginning of this show.
is
of
it's
this
very
episode
subjective.
is that, just because I say something, it doesn't mean I have anything against you. This is the way I feel. This is what I believe. And that doesn't mean I think less of you as a human being just because I say that. And does it mean it? Here's the question. Does it mean it if you perceive it that way?
It's a great question. A little open the philosophy floor for discussion, right?
Because today, I think most people would say that it does. If I perceive it as an insult, then it's an insult. And it's like, no, wait a minute, folks. And I know maybe that's discussion for another time, but so I'll just throw that one out as a rhetorical and get people to think about it unless you want to take that on here in the last minute and a half of the show. But is it an injustice if you perceive it to be?
And see,
even though the person who said it or did it didn't mean for it to be an injustice. If you perceive it as an injustice, does that make it an injustice? I say not.
Right.
But but that's just, so I guess it's not rhetorical. I answered it.
I hope the people listening from the questions that Lance is posing here, from my breakdown of the mission, are getting the empathizing with this is a difficult choice to make, right? Where is
right on the surface it seems easy, right?
Yeah.
You read the headline, it's like, well, yeah, take away hate speech, take away evil people. We don't want that out there. That's bad. Mm-hmm.
Until somebody says that you've insulted them,
right?
And then your speech is being violated,
right?
And that's where it becomes difficult. To answer your question, again, reactionary level, this is where part of what TrueChat is working on, part of what the State of Us is working on, is reminding people that most issues are not singular. In other words, they're not either or. We play that with the debate of the day to intentionally be difficult, right? To put you in that position of you must choose. Part of the reason it's hard is I want cake and pie, okay? I don't really want to give up cake, right? I would like cake as well. Lance is okay getting rid of it. Just like the pancakes and waffles things, right? I would rather have the choice of having both than having to choose just one. Most of us don't want to be forced into that position. And I think that's how I look at the answer to your question, Lance. If I didn't mean it, right, in a mean way, but you perceived it in a mean way, was it mean? Yes and no, because it wasn't meant to be mean, right? So I wasn't sending it as mean, but you received it as mean. So the truth is, right? My truth is that I didn't mean for it to be mean, but you interpreted it as mean. So you felt the meanness. The meanness wasn't any less real just because I didn't mean it. Likewise, my intent wasn't evil just because you perceived it that way. And so therefore, again, because it doesn't make the emotions not real, I guess is what I'm getting at. Just because I didn't mean to make you feel bad doesn't mean that you didn't actually feel bad. So the point in this is it's a longer philosophical conversation. The reason I wanted to bring this up today is because hopefully you can see how even somebody like TrueChat, with what I'd imagine a lot of our listeners feel is a relatively noble cause that we're, seeking to live out and pursue, can be challenged in a complicated way of who gets to draw the line, I think is the bigger question, right? And then we can even debate, well, what is the line? Most of us could agree maybe on one point of that, but then the question becomes, who gets to make that determination? Who do we trust to make that choice? And that's the big challenge in all of this. And that's part of what makes, again, what we are as humans so interesting, is who we trust to make these determinations, whether it's a judge, a jury, or whatever else. So, Lance?
Yes, sir.
We can't cover it all today.
Right.
You dislike the first part, right, about taking down content because it might be mean to other groups. You like the part, though, about taking down content which is demonstrably false.
Right.
That isn't meant in a satire type way. In other words, right. It's not taking down somebody's who's being funny, right, and who's pretending, and it's clearly they're not actually serious about it being real, but somebody who's trying to purposely convey false information that flies in the face of commonly accepted fact. Mm-hmm. See, that opens up a bucket of worms.
Yeah, it does. I'm just staying quiet because you're still talking.
Is it a bucket of worms?
Can
of worms.
Can of worms.
Yeah, that's like my
NHS got it.
grain of sand, grain of salt. Yeah.
NHS for the win.
A bucket of worms, now that'd be a big mess. Can of worms.
Depends on how big the bucket is.
That's true. Maybe it's a really...
Because I've got some really small buckets at home, yeah.
You can get some pretty big cans too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair. So Lance, we've challenged people to tune in this year, right? To invite others to tune in.
Mm-hmm.
And when they're going to do that, they need to, like I have done, sit with somebody and show them maybe how to, because we want people of all ages. We've been big on that. Trying to bring us together.
Right.
Lance and I are pretty far apart, and then you bring Caleb in and it's like,
the gap grows.
The gap grows. So how can people tune in?
On their computer or a phone. I don't know. What other devices are there? Their drone.
Their drone?
Can their drone get it?
I don't think that's how drones work.
Do they have to go to the cloud?
Oh, Lord.
It is stored in the cloud.
Okay.
That is stored in the
All
cloud.
right. So, I mean, you got your devices, but then on your device, you got to somehow attach to the cloud through Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, or anywhere else fine podcasts are found.
Spotify's dope, right, Lance?
I don't know. I've never, I've tried to stay away from dope, but if Spotify's dope, then I'll take your word for it.
The gap widens.
The gap widens. Oh, yes. Let us know your thoughts at TrueChat.org. We really do want them, especially on conversations like this, the ones that aren't easy to come to. Who gets to decide what is truth, right? Or what is hate? Because those are tough.
Truth, justice, and the American way.
Superman.
Very good. NHS is doing it today. He's on it.
We'll end it on a high note. For the State of Us on TrueChat in Urbana, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
And I'm Caleb Spinner.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change.